What's up, everybody? Coach Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Valorant video. And in this video, we're gonna break down the new agent tier list because the new patch 5.0 just dropped. Plus, we have a ton of information about Copenhagen, so we can combine both and figure out what agents are the best and worst to play right now, who you should be grinding, and who you should probably stay away from. But first, let me tell you about this insane tool, the Overwolf Valorant Tracker. This is an in-game Valorant tracker that is gonna give you live performance updates while you're playing. You're gonna be able to look at your player profile, find your best and worst maps so that you know exactly what you need to focus on, your own personal stats, your most played agent that you can use to gather important information about what you need to do and how you can improve from here. This is our most exciting sponsor yet because it goes hand in hand with our mission to help you improve, and this is perfect for those of you who want to climb. So go check it out right now in the download links below. Now, let's start off with the characters in the F tier, but two of the characters in the F tier actually got buffs in this patch. So we're going to talk about where they are right now and where they're most likely going to move to in the foreseeable future. So in Copenhagen right now, there are three characters that have no pick rate, and it's Reyna, Phoenix, and Yoru. Now, before we talk about the two characters that did get buffs in patch 5.01, let's talk about Reyna. Why does Reyna have so little pick rate? Well, ultimately, Reyna is a very pub stompy character centered around aim. It's very hard to set up kills with her unless you get a kill to start off with. Her flashes are very ineffective against players that properly shoot the blinds and are ready for her to swing out. And the rest of her kit only unlocks when you get kills. And when you're up against players that are good, that use their abilities, that set up their abilities to get them these picks and get them these favorable engagements, Reyna's just lacking. If you are the best player in a lobby of ranked, Reyna is an amazing character because you can channel that to get kill after kill after kill, but you have to be far and away the best player mechanically. But if you're not, you're going to be leaving a ton of value on the table. And honestly, when you climb up to the higher ranks, Reyna is a very, very bad pick. And she honestly is a character that most likely you should only play if you're hard stuck and way better than the people in your rank, which is probably not true if you're hard stuck, or you are smurfing. I mean, that's really it. That's like the only two reasons you want to play her. Next up, we gotta talk about the other two characters, Yoru and Phoenix. Now, Yoru is getting a buff to his ultimate. Now he can actually pop out of his ultimate and make plays, and his ultimate lasts longer as well. And that's a huge change. And while based on pro pick rate, Yoru would be something like the F tier, in ranked pick rate, he was already something like the B tier. And now with these new changes, I can imagine that for pro play, he goes to something like a C tier, seeing play here or there with a Yoru specialist. And in ranked, he could even be up to A tier because he's one of the most powerful potential characters in ranked. But in my personal opinion, Yoru has one of, if not the highest skill ceiling in the game. So he's a character that is very powerful, but is also very hard to play. He's a character that you would have to put in the time and effort into master. But of course, on the GameLeap website, there's Yoru guides and VOD reviews. So if you want more, go check it out. Now, as far as Phoenix is concerned, Phoenix did get some substantial buffs. His flashes are popping faster. His flashes are lasting longer. He can whip out his weapon faster after he uses his wall, and he gets his full HP and armor back after his ultimate. Phoenix got a lot of buffs around the board, but I don't necessarily think it individually makes him powerful enough to replace a lot of the duelist options that are existing right now in the game. That being said, for ranked play, he's going to be a lot more viable, and he's probably going to be upped all the way to the C, maybe even the B tier in some situations. The play pattern of walling off a site and then pop flashing out of your own wall to generate space is going to be something that you're going to have to do a lot. And then in addition to that, farming orbs and using your ultimate to generate more space for your team make Phoenix a fairly good option for ranked play. But unless some more buffs are targeted towards him, I don't imagine he would be the top of the meta or a substantial agent picked in pro play. But I don't think that that is 100% necessary. I think he's still a fine pick for ranked. And for now, we're going to put him at the top of C tier, a lot better than being a throw pick. Now, we do got to talk about two characters that are seeing almost no play in Copenhagen as of now, and it's Cypher and Neon, only at 4% each, and they're basically seeing play almost nowhere. Now, you got to realize that Neon is a fairly niche pick in general. Some teams favor her more, and of course, when we looked at the NA pick rate, she was played a lot more, but there are some teams that actually like her better. Teams like FaZe will play her quite often, but so far in this tournament, they're not that represented. Now, Cypher is probably going to increase in pick rate as more map rate picks get filled out. That being said, Cypher's best map, or one of his best maps, is Split, which is still being played in Copenhagen, but not played in ranked. So that's artificially inflating his pick rate even more. And Cypher, unfortunately, is a character that has just fallen down the wayside, in large part to the power level of Chamber right now. And especially when you have another Sentinel that's powerful in Sage, and then so many great duelist and initiator options, it's really hard to make the argument to want a Cypher on your team. And I do think that substantial buffs need to be added in order to upgrade him from that C tier and move him on to something higher. Now, I want to talk about how much the meta has been changing, especially when you add international into the discussion, and we actually get to look and see what is happening a lot in many of these matches. JETT and Sova have fallen quite hard. While they're both 18% here, after enough games are played, their pick rate is probably going to go up quite a bit. But you do have to understand that the stats aren't lying. Right now, Fade is being preferred heavily to Sova, and it's looking like we're entering into a Fade meta where Fade is picked far and away, when teams are picking Fade on the majority of maps, and it looks like players have learned Fade enough to the point where Sova has fallen out of favor. Still good, but no longer the go-to initiator. And it really looks like Fade is going to be the next initiator to learn and grind if you want to climb. Fade being in something like S tier, and Sova being towards the B tier based on pick rate alone. Now, we talked about this in a previous tier list, how it was really good news that Fade was climbing the pick rates every single time we were doing a tier list, because she's much newer. Players had much longer to develop with Sova, a lot more time to grind and learn all the tech to him, and it was only a matter of time until Fade caught up at the rate she was going, and it looks like that has happened. Another thing we do got to talk about is JETT. JETT is no longer the de facto opera. We have Chamber for that, and as far as initiators are concerned, a combination of Raze, KO, and even Breach are being used as a counter to something like JETT. Instead of playing JETT, they're playing these characters instead. JETT is still fine on certain maps, especially maps like Ascent, but all in all, JETT is seeing a lot less play than she was before, and this has been happening across tournaments, and it's looking like she is going to be a decent duelist, but she is not going to be far and away the best thing to be doing like she has been for so very long. Now, Killjoy is a character that sees really inconsistent play. Typically, Ascent is the map that she mainly sees play on, if any at all, but a lot of maps she doesn't see that much play on. Astra is seeing some play here or there on a number of different maps. Players have been experimenting at the pro level with Astra, and I think that that puts Astra in the B tier. That being said, you got to understand that Astra is a lot weaker for ranked play, probably closer to the F tier for ranked play, because you do need a lot of coordination, and even with all the coordination provided, she's still only getting barely 20% pick rate. Then moving on to the A tier pick rate characters, we're going to talk about all the controllers, we're going to talk about Breach, and we're going to talk about Sage. Now, we've entered a situation where, for the most part, the controller role is the most balanced role in the game, with all of the characters being around the same pick rate. Now, we've talked a lot in the past about how Viper is fundamentally different from Brimstone and Omen, because she provides a very different type of smoke that is necessary or preferred on maps like Icebox and Breeze, but she's even seeing play here and there on Bind. And all in all, she's in a really healthy spot right now. Very powerful, but I think the only thing that would make it a little bit better is if there was another controller added. I hope the next agent is a controller that can fight her for some of her pick rate in a very similar way that Brimstone and Omen are challenging each other for their pick rate. Now, it's interesting though, because Brimstone and Omen see play on very different maps. Brimstone typically always sees play on Bind, always sees play on Fracture, as opposed to Omen that is more preferred on maps like Ascent and Haven. So it's a cool balance here, and I do think that both of these controllers are viable on the maps that you would play either of them on in ranked, and then Viper is the go-to for the maps that you need her on, especially maps like Breeze and Icebox. You really want a Viper over these other controller options. Now, of course, Breach has kind of just exploded in pick rate out of nowhere. For a while, he was a 100% pick rate Fracture only, and then he saw a little bit more pick rate on maps like Haven, and overall, he's a really powerful character that has seen the light, basically. A lot of enabling is going on right now with initiators, where a Breach will flash out different players to take space aggressively on defense or take control of different areas on the map. Fracture's a great example of that, where there's a ton of areas you can clear with Breach, and of course his ultimate lines up perfectly. And then even Haven, because the points between default and points are so close together, it's really easy to retake that space with Breach. So all in all, Breach is very powerful, and he's towards the top of A tier. But the last character I do gotta talk about in A tier is Sage. Sage is a really powerful character on the map she's good in. Good in maps like Fracture, good on maps like Icebox, and there's a lot of other maps that players are experimenting with her. Of course, her pick rate is slightly inflated because EU players typically prefer Sage more than NA players. That being said, Sage is really strong, and as a Sentinel, she does something very unique. She has the stalling capability that is very different from a lot of other characters, and all in all, she is more flexible on attack as compared to Cypher and Killjoy, where they are really powerful on defense, but they have their limitations on attack, while Sage has a lot of utility on both attack and defense, and then just good utility in general, making her a much more flexible character and very, very powerful, of course. Now, let's move on to the S tier. These are characters that are basically the creme de la creme right now, incredibly powerful, and one of them is priced to stay that way, actually get more powerful, and he's at the bottom of the S tier right now. It's KO, 46% pick rate, but Icebox, he's seeing a ton of play. Ascent, he's seeing a ton of play. He's seeing play on basically every single map, honestly, besides Fracture, where Brimstone is favored. KO is so damn powerful. He's incredibly efficient at what he does. He shuts off enemies' abilities. He allows you to gain information or stop rushes. Basically can dictate an entire game because you can go and either farm orbs for offensive rushes with your ultimate or use your ultimate for retakes. There's so much about KO that is amazing. And of course, the cherry on top is that his flashes are like the best in the game. They're just so powerful when you're pop flashing out of a smoke or across a Viper smoke. KO is really great, and the quality of life changes that he's gaining, meaning that his sound is no longer being played the entire time he's res, just at the start, meaning you'll get res more and it'll give your team more ability to bait a res and, you know, outplay an enemy. And then the fact that his Molly only requires line of sight means that KO is going to be more consistent. Even if the radius is smaller, it doesn't matter. Molly being more consistent is just going to be better for the character. KO is going to get stronger and stronger. I'm actually very surprised that they buffed KO because he's already insane. He's already one of the strongest characters in the game, and he's priced to get even better. Now, we did mention Fade. Fade has become one of the best characters in the game. She is basically overtaken Sova in a lot of ways, and I would not be surprised if she just keeps gaining pick rate more and more. It was only a matter of time until players really unlocked her potential because there's so many lineups, there's so many very specific techs you have to learn on her, and then just the nuance of being able to use her dog aggressively, gather info. Comboing is something that we're seeing a lot right now in Copenhagen, where we're seeing her trap being combined with Raze's nade in a lot of places, and it's getting a ridiculous amount of kills. It's so freaking strong. Like, imagine Haven on defense, where people peek window, you just throw the trap and the nade, and they can't get out and they die. Like, what the hell? It's actually so strong. It's a very powerful combo that you could do in your games, and this is actually the duo that I would suggest the most right now in ranked, is Raze and Fade. Really powerful, really strong. And of course, I do gotta talk about Raze, also in the S tier, just seeing a crazy amount of play. Not as much on Icebox and Ascent, but on basically every other map right now. Bind, Haven, Fracture. She's very, very strong. She does have her weaknesses in the fact that she's better on maps that have tighter corridors, but I do think that she's going to work incredibly well on Pearl. It makes a lot of sense that she would, and Raze is just a very powerful initiator, and she's kind of becoming one of the best duelists. Remember, we've talked in the past on tier list that Raze brings something unique to the table, and right now, because initiators are so strong and Chamber's so strong, that uniqueness is really what is desired in a composition. And she has ultimately become the best duelist in the game right now. So that's really, really good for you Raze mains. And if you're looking for a duelist to grind, Raze might be your pick. Now, of course, at the top of the S tier, he needs no introduction. It's Chamber. He's the best. He's just freaking nuts. I mean, if they're not going to nerf this character, just play him. Just abuse him. He's insane in pro play, and he's even more insane in ranked. You have the capability on Chamber to completely lock down sides of the map. The fact that you could play an off angle, get a one tap and get away, and then enemies just basically have to engage on your cooldown, or you get to do it again. You get to lock down so much. You have a very, very powerful eco, which can just win rounds out of nowhere. You have an operator, which is just ridiculously fast firing, very hard to punish, almost impossible to punish, right? It fires very fast, one bullet after the other. So it's basically like you have to perfectly actually trade out with it in order to get the kill, but then he could also teleport, which means that it's almost impossible. Like, it's just a character that can't really get punished very easily, if at all. Your best case scenario, if the enemy chamber is opping, is using utility to force teleport and then taking space and put him in a retake scenario. That's like the only thing that you can realistically do. And that's why characters that can gather information or flash a corner, characters like KO, characters like Fade are really powerful and needed if you want to go up against chambers in the game right now. But definitely let me know what part of this tier list you agree or disagree with. What's your favorite character right now? And what characters do you think need buffs or nerfs? I really want to hear your opinion about all that down below. I do think that 5.01 is going to give us a lot of fun changes to ranked, and some characters are going to be more viable in ranked than they were before. But ultimately, it's not going to make a large impact in pro play, at least not right now. But let me know down below. Thank you so much for coming by, and I'll see you next time.